What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys that was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right. Welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. I'm so excited for this episode. I have been waiting for this. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Don't forget to follow and subscribe, share, do all that stuff. It helps the show. Okay. So I was this is like a couple weeks ago, and Julie, my wife, she's playing with the TV, see what's on TV, and I was going through my LinkedIn, and I ran across Jeff Grant, a friend of mine, had reposted something, and this post from Portia Louder, who I had not met, don't know. I mean, I just get like, she's done this post about, and it was just a deep feeling post about the hard feelings of a prison visit and how you feel so great and warm inside, and then that moment when they get up and they leave, and you have this empty feeling, and you're on the other side of the world. And I mean, I felt it down to my toes because the 3 years that I served, it was every time that visit happened, those few minutes you had right before the end of the visit, you knew it was all going to break up again. But anyway, as I do, I love good stories, and I thought I got to know more about this Portia. So then I got into her TED Talk, and I love TED Talks. I've listened to them all the time, but Portia's TED Talk was so good. I mean, I said, Julie, whatever you're doing, I said, stop. You got to. And I rewound the TED Talk, and we listened to Portia and her story, and she told it so well. And so I reached out to her, and she has one heck of a story. Because she does have a story. She's written a couple of books. She's an author of Born to Be Brave. That came out April 15th, 2024. Living Louder was her first book. She's probably going to write more books because she's so good at writing. She went to prison for mortgage fraud, and we were just talking about, she got an incredibly long sentence. She got 7 years on a plea bargain. And I think they were telling her she would have maybe gotten 8 years or so if she would have gone to trial. So, it was in the time period where they were really handing out strong sentences, and I can't wait to get into all this. I can't wait to unpack this. But before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. Who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car. Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take care of all that pain and hassle of getting a car. It's Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge, the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Portia Louder, thank you for being here.
It's super cool to be with you, Brent.
Well, I'm glad we got everything worked out, because about a minute before we got on, my camera was just dark black. And then I got it to work because one of my little things wasn't plugged in right. And then Portia said she couldn't hear me. And all of a sudden, what was it, like a minute or so, we figured it out. So we can hear and see each other. So you guys can hear and see us too. Portia, wow, where should we start? Let's just start at the beginning, because I know you were the oldest of 7 kids. Kind of walk us through that life that you lived, because I think you lived kind of an eclectic life with your parents and growing up, and walk us through that a little bit.
So my parents were pretty non-traditional. We grew up out in the country, like on a dirt road where I don't think we might have had 1 or 2 neighbors within 5 miles. And My mom was a super hippie before it was even a thing to be a hippie. Like, it was all natural foods, and she just didn't believe in structure or rules. And so she would read us these stories about cultures that didn't have those rules, and we were a family that didn't have rules. But my
Like when
dad,
you say you didn't have rules, what is that? Like I
oh,
think about like as a kid, like I could come home anytime I want, I can play outside
all the,
forever, however long I want to go, all those things. I
yeah,
can go to bed anytime I want.
correct. We went to bed when we wanted. We got up when we wanted. We didn't have to brush our teeth if we didn't want. Everything was just do what you want. Also, though, in the winter, we would go outside and jump on the trampoline barefoot or naked, run through the snow. Like, it was just kind of wild. Like, the kids were running the house. And since I'm the oldest,
Yeah,
I'm the leader, the gang
of
leader, I would tell people in
of
prison.
course.
um,
You're the
but
organizer.
I was I got that enhancement too. Like, sitting in the courtroom.
That's
I'm like, that sounds
you got to
familiar.
take that as a compliment.
Yeah. But my dad's this very strong, pretty stubborn person. He went to Vietnam, had his own trauma as a kid, but he just had to figure out how to do life himself. And so he was frustrated, I guess. There was a lot of chaos, even though, I mean, my dad loved my mom.
Hmm.
And but I think for him, he was really structured. So he was up at 4 and 5 in the morning because we had animals that he would take care of. And then he had a regular job and he had a side hustle. Always have businesses on the
So
side.
he was very structured. So you lived in an unstructured house with a dad that was a very structured military man.
Yeah. Crazy. Huh?
Wow.
Yeah.
Opposites attract.
Yeah. And I think my dad and I really butted heads when I was younger because he would try to set boundaries. And I'm like, yeah, right.
Yeah, we don't do
By the
that.
time I'm 12 and 13 years old, good luck trying to tell me what to do.
Hmm.
And so my first struggle was definitely relationships. I thought that what boys thought of me was the most important thing. I wanted attention from older boys that would come around and drive my dad crazy. But if my dad told me I couldn't go, I would just have
Then
him.
that really was on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would. Yeah, I'd come home, he'd get in my face, I'd get in his face, and it just never ended very well. So difficult.
Did you
My
have like a pretty normal like school world that you lived in, or like
mm,
what was
no.
that like?
Well, like my siblings, my mom pulled all my siblings out of school because she
Okay.
just thought it was too mean.
Okay.
And so their education was very non-traditional, but they learned to read because my parents are both readers.
Yeah.
So they valued education, just not structure. I would say they were anti-establishment. My dad too. Like, they
Yeah.
kind of wanted to do life their own way.
Hmm.
Me as the oldest, I liked school because I liked the social.
Yeah.
And so I chose to stay in school, and
That was your decision.
it was my choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
But by the time I was in my teenage years, I just didn't go to school most of the time. I went when I wanted to go, mostly for social.
Social.
Yeah. I never considered I would go to college or anything. I mean, I knew I'd get a job because that's what my parents did. They worked hard. And so
Yeah.
I'll just go start a company. I think I started my first company when I was 16.
No
So,
kidding. What was
yeah.
it?
My mom was a photographer, and it was an invitation. Like, I sold announcements and other uh,
Really?
accessories to people that were getting married. And my business, I started making more money than she did. Like, I was making
Wow.
back in the 80s, like a couple thousand a month selling invitations as a
That's
16.
crazy. But I do know, I mean, having three daughters, I know what a big world that is. The
Yeah.
wedding world is its whole universe to itself. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of people that make a really good living in that world.
Well, yeah. And it ended up that, I mean, it's a small town. So I drive to people's houses, and we didn't have the internet back then. So people didn't know
Yeah.
how to buy except for this. And so my mom bought that company back from me.
That's funny. You got it going,
Yeah.
built it
But
up.
yeah, I mean, later, that kind of ended abruptly when I ended up pregnant young. So
17, right?
teen, yeah. Can you imagine?
No,
I still can't imagine.
well,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's so many things as a young teenager that you're dealing with. And then, I always think about the unfortunate girl that gets pregnant
Mm.
in high school because That wasn't the only girl that should have gotten pregnant. You
Right.
were the one where the feather landed on you
And
and, the
and
bad
that
luck.
was us.
But I
For
mean,
me,
that's just really the way it happens, you know?
right.
It's kinda like we were having this discussion the other night, they were talking about, how bad people, can go to prison, but we were talking about, well, it's like a couple goes out with another couple to dinner and they have some drinks and they leave in separate cars and one couple gets a DWI and the other person just goes home and goes to bed and they
Yeah.
go on with their life. That's just, one of those things that happens that, you got pregnant at 17, but how did you deal with that?
Well, it's interesting because I look at my kids, every one of them as they've turned 17, and I'm just looking at them going,
Yeah.
I was pregnant at your age. I mean, they're just children, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, children having children. Yeah.
Right. But, and fortunately, none of my kids have gone through that. In fact, I think my son was 35 when he had his first child. So,
Yeah.
but, for me, I don't think it was, I mean, I didn't have any plans to go to college. I hadn't really ever left that small town. My mom had 7 kids, so I was used to babies being around. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I better figure this out. So I went and found a low income apartment. I got on welfare. I did what somebody would do to take care of their child. And then I
Mhm.
moved out into low income housing and started babysitting other kids in the low income housing. And I guess I just figured I need to find a man to marry. Everything will be fine. That's
Mhm.
how it'll all work out for me. And, you know, there wasn't any shortage of older men in the town that would date me. I mean, there's always, so I ended up meeting someone who was 10 years older than me. And I remember we'd gone out on a couple dates and he's like, I'm your best option. You should probably marry me because I can take care of you.
A lot of
Like
love there.
true love, right? He still lives in the town and he's a nice guy that was, but
Yeah.
anyway, we didn't even know each other. So we got married and, and it wasn't,
Backyard at his house.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wasn't going great, as you can imagine. So my life took a shift though, because my dad was transferred for the job that he had to Salt Lake, which is the city in Utah. And I had never been to Salt Lake. It was a big deal for me, for my family to leave, because this was, our
Sure.
family was a tribe. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, so I had to go see my parents, took my son to visit. And it was such a shock for me to see the city. It was just like, wow. Like it was almost like there's a whole world I never knew existed.
Yeah.
I could have something more than this little town. I could
Uh-huh.
get a job, other
Yeah.
than McDonald's. And
Possibilities.
yeah, it felt that way. I remember telling my ex-husband when I drove back, I said, I want to move to the city. I want to have a job. And he was just blown away. He's like, why would you ever want to leave this town? I'm never leaving this town. And I was like, I have to go. I can't stay. And
Yeah.
he was just, okay, we'll go. We don't really even get along. Let's just get divorced and you can go.
Easy decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Easy to get married. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what we did. And then I moved to Salt Lake, got a job working for my uncle as a photographer. And I found out I was pregnant with my daughter shortly after I moved. And I remember, I was 21 when my second child was born. So you can imagine I was probably about 20 when I found out I was pregnant. I just remember feeling alone during that time, just really alone. But I had a job and I was working and my parents were helping with my son. And then when my daughter was born, my dad
Was
knew.
the photography at that point in your life, was that centered around the wedding world or
Yeah,
was it? Yeah.
my mom was a photographer. My grandpa was a photographer, my uncle. So
It
it
was just
runs
kind of
with,
within your
yeah,
family. Okay.
yeah, it was like a family thing. So that I had grown up watching. But when I found out, or after I had my daughter, my dad knows how stubborn I am, right? He
Yeah,
just
I'm
knows.
sure he does.
He's never going to tell me, yeah, he's never going to tell me what to do.
Right.
But my parents were religious, but not like, again, they're very anti-establishment. So we would go to church, but we kind of marched to our own drum. Anyone from the town that I grew up in will say, your family was so different than everybody else's. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, well, but anyway, he recommended that I go to church and I tried that. I went to church and there we sat in church and I look around and I see all these other people that are married with families. And I think, I
That's
just
what
have
I
to get
need.
married. Yeah, that's the that's the ticket to happiness. And
But I can see how that could happen. I mean, it's very normal, Portia. You're going into church, you see they have kids and they're married, and they're like, well, then that's what I should do.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just follow the crowd here.
Yeah.
But the problem was I just wasn't in a place where I was picking the right people to date or anything else. And so I started dating again and I got pregnant again. Now, the thing about me, the thing about me is that I get pregnant really easy. I've tried one time to have a kid once and the rest of it just happened. So,
It's a
so
talent.
that was a pretty, I don't think I ever felt scared until that pregnancy. And
What do you
that
think scared you? Like, what be just the sheer number of kids that you
no,
had and you were on your own?
no, because that never really scared me. What
Okay.
scared
What
me
was
was
it that scared you?
that I was mature enough. I had a job. I was a little older. What scared me is that I thought I'm taking hostages. Like I can't
Oh,
be doing this to my children.
you were
I
feeling
have
bad for your
children.
kids.
Yeah, no father, no child support. No, it's like my kids deserve better. I'm looking at these two children that
Hmm.
I already have and thinking they don't have what they deserve. They deserve more.
Hmm.
And my parents were really supportive. My kids grew up, they loved my parents because they were such a part of their lives. But I just thought, how am I ever going to even provide for these two, let alone another one? It just felt unfair. And, my mom, when I told my mom, I actually said my first prayer out of desperation, I'm
Yeah.
like, and it was just, please help me, God, know what to do. And I clearly remember feeling a strength that I hadn't felt before. I don't know how else to describe it other than just stronger than I knew and I'm a pretty strong person, but
Very.
yeah,
All you got to do is just look up Portia Louder and you'll find out Strong's there too.
I'm a pretty strong person.
Resilient is also part of the dictionary terms.
Right. So, but I felt stronger than I had, and I knew I needed to place my son for adoption. And I let my mother know. My mom said, no, Portia, it would be too hard for you to do that. Let me raise the child. And I said, Mom, we're not even that good at raising kids. Seriously, no,
Mhm.
And my dad was like, Portia, you can do this. I believe in you. So I found a family and they were wonderful. And they were with me through all my doctor appointments. And then the day he was born, they were there with me in the hospital and I watched them hold him for the first time.
Mm.
And then they walked out to go, to go in the other room. And I just was like, I feel something really wrong inside me. And I didn't understand it because I had prepared, like I imagined them taking this child home. It wasn't mine to keep.
Right.
I just kept thinking that I could power through it, but
Yeah.
it didn't work. I just felt empty. And
I can't
I,
imagine.
yeah, they didn't talk about trauma or therapy or anything. I just thought I'll go back to work. Everything will be fine. And it wasn't like that. I felt totally empty inside. My doctor had prescribed Percocet, and I started using a lot of Percocet. I used that whole prescription and asked for more. Back then, they gave you what you wanted in terms of
That
pills.
was your great escape.
Yeah. And then I thought, I just need more drugs. I just need more Percocet. My life will be okay if I can just take enough Percocet.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to work, and eventually, my addiction just gets the best of me. And I went from Percocet to street drugs and lost my
Did you
job.
feel like you were falling into it, Portia, or was it just something that was all of a sudden there you are?
Uh,
Because I think it comes different from different people.
yeah,
Different.
I just was running away from the pain,
Yeah.
and it gets difficult to keep getting pain pills. And
Mhm.
so,
You can get into dangerous situations too with that.
yeah,
If you go to
yeah,
street drugs, then you're
I did
putting
get into
yourself into
dangerous
a
situations.
world that's
Yeah, I was surprised that I went places that I never thought I would go,
they
and I saw
scare you
I never thought I would see. Um,
or not.
I don't scare
I was
easily.
going to say when I asked you that question, I was thinking, Portia, that's another thing, not scared.
I don't scare that easily, and
Yeah.
that can be good and bad because, um, but I think what it was is it sickened me because
Yeah.
I saw a young drug dealer who was pimping out his mom who was drug addicted. I saw children running around in places they never should because I left my parents' home and I would go to these drug neighborhoods.
Did
And
they know, Portia, that you were getting
yeah,
into this? They did.
it got pretty bad. In fact, my dad said, he was really mad because that's how he approaches things, and he would try to fight with me. And I'm like, yeah, good luck. And the smartest thing my dad ever did was he let go. And I remember when the time came for me and I wanted to climb out of this hole, I went to my dad and I said, Dad, I don't know what to do. And he goes, I already let you go. This is yours to figure out. I figured you would probably die. He's like, I
Wow.
can't. Yeah, he just there was nothing he could do. So he just let go. And I was gone all the time. My parents were raising my kids. I think that a counselor told my parents, take custody of the kids. But my mom isn't the type to ever do that. Like, she would have never kicked me out. They just wouldn't, they probably should have. But I reached the bottom. I came home late one night after using drugs, and my mom was standing there with my son, who was about 8, and he had been crying, waiting for me for hours. And I remember when I walked in, my mom just looked at me and she goes, and I already knew my dad had let me go, right? But my mom would never, ever give up on her kids. And she just said, I can't imagine what it would take for you to change your life, because this little boy loves you so much, and he's been sitting here for hours waiting for you.
That sends chills up my spine.
Yeah. She just said, then nothing would ever change your life if this little boy isn't enough. It was like, yeah, it was such a shock to me. I just grabbed my son and walked downstairs and laid on the floor and sobbed and begged God to take it from me. I just said, I can't do it anymore. I'm so tired of hurting my children. And I was just licked at that point. And my sweet son, he's the sweetest. He came over and he said, Mom, why are you crying, Mom? It's okay, Mom. And I said, no, Jace, it's not. I am such an ugly person. He's like, no, Mom, you're beautiful. And he pulled me over to the mirror and he goes, see, Mom, you're so beautiful. And I knew that
How old would he have been at that time?
He was probably 7 to 8 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just knew I would go to any length at that point to change my life. And I was really in a deep hole. There's been a few times that I've been in that deep hole, but this was one of them for sure. And the next day I went across the street and knocked on a guy in our neighborhood's door who I knew was a counselor and I didn't want anything to do with him. My parents had been talking to him, but I was like, pfft. And I said, I'm Cliff and Chris's daughter and I'm a drug addict. I need help. He's like, okay.
That's your elevator pitch.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't care. I was desperate. So, and he was a really good guy because he did a couple of things. First, he called somebody who was an addict who was going to 12-step meetings to AA, and he had him come take me to my first meeting, which was so eye-opening for me to be in a room where everybody's open and honest with each other and vulnerable. And I'm like, I just thought that I had to get the pills out of my system or whatever, right. The drugs. Right. It wasn't that at all. It's community. It's an internal thing. It's a spiritual thing. The solution is basically a principle-centered solution. And when I saw that there were people that had sobriety, I just walked up after the meeting and I said, how did you do it? And this man that's all lit up, he goes, well, you got to become a good person. And the way to do that is this book. And he handed me the AA Big Book and he said, you got to learn how to live a principle-centered life.
Wow.
You got to start being nice to people. Wow. I'm like, whoa, this is way out there. So I started down that path. The counselor was very helpful for me. I remember him telling me he wanted me to figure out why I had done all the things I had done. And I just kept thinking, well, it's my ex-husband, it's my dad, it's my mom. And he goes, keep thinking about it, Portia. Let me know what you think, come up with next week. And then it occurred to me, I remember I called him at work and I said, I think I figured out why I did all the things I did. And he said, why is that? I said, because I wanted to. And that was such an important lesson for me because there's power in accountability. That's where you begin building something new. And so he's like, yes, you're on the right path. And so I remember thinking this would be the hardest thing I ever had to do. I've learned never to say that because there's always harder, but it really was hard. The basic steps that I took to change my life and keep my word with my children, everything felt uncomfortable. I felt very insecure. I went and got a job as a telemarketer, and that was hard for me to do because I had just lost.
You're probably a good telemarketer.
I don't know about that. It's not my favorite, but I did it. And I took pride in it, you know?
Mhm.
But I mean, my photography background, I just, my uncle actually, I mean, I was so broke. This was a long time ago. And he goes, Portia, if you buy a pager, any weddings that we can't photograph, we'll send you their phone number and you can reach out to them and see if they'll let you shoot, take their pictures. And that's what I did. I went and got a pager and I was doing telemarketing. And when the pager went off, I'd go call from the pay phone because I didn't afford a cell phone. And this is a long time ago. And I started booking weddings. And once I got to the point where I was booking enough weddings, I could let go of the other job, But now the cool part about all this is that I had accepted 100% that I was not looking for a man to solve my problems
Of
anymore.
course. Good point.
But I ended up meeting my husband, who is really such a great man. And
How'd you meet him?
So my sister, I have a sister that went to college, and it still shocks me because my parents didn't take her up there. My parents didn't encourage it. In fact, she never got any kudos for going to college or anything.
She just went.
It's like, why did you go to college? We're all just like, what were you thinking? I think she had to go get student loans, and she had one of her friends' parents take her up.
For her.
I know. She's amazing that she figured all that out. She actually we moved to a great, up to the city to this great big high school, and she went and tried out for cheerleader and made cheerleader her first year there because she's just very,
How much younger is she than you?
She's a few years younger. There's one other sister every 18 months, my mom had a kid. So.
Yeah. She was good at having kids also.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something we do really well.
Runs in the family.
Yep. So, but Kira went to college and then she was dating my husband's really good friend. In fact, they were engaged and they came down to the house with my husband who was hanging out with them and we met. And I remember the first time I met Chad thinking, I wish my life were different because you're such a great person. I mean, he has these amazing blue eyes and a really great smile and he's kind and good. And
if you read about him, he sounds like an incredible person.
He's an incredible man. Yeah. I don't know what I did to deserve being married to him, but he's great. And, but we went out on our first date. Actually, what kind of happened was, my sister's boyfriend felt really bad. He was there when I placed my son for adoption, and it just kind of broke his heart to see me go through all that. And he's like, I want to set her up with Chad, But he warned Chad. He goes, she's really wild. You got to be so careful with her. She'll eat you up. You don't know her.
Sign me up.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know what he was in for, but yeah, our first date, I asked him, what scares you the most about me, Chad? And he's like, everything.
Everything.
Everything. Which makes sense because I scare myself quite often. So, but yeah, he's great. We got married and he adopted the kids and started building this new life. And I was grateful. Because I knew the difference. I knew what it was like to live differently. And, the thing, I look back on that time and I'm like, our life got too good too fast. I started my own photography business, really grew. I think I went from 20 or 30 weddings a year to 200 over a few.
Oh my gosh, Portia.
Yeah. So I had full calendar. I'm photographing from morning to night. And I have employees now. And then I did what I always do. And I had 2 more kids, 18 months apart. The only one I've ever tried for was Jackson. Chad and I
Which I love that name, Jackson. That's such a cool name.
He's a really cool kid too. But, and then we had Sadie, I got pregnant right away. In fact, I started building a home. I bought a studio. My business is going wild. Jackson's born, and then I find out I'm pregnant with Sadie all in the same time. And after Sadie, I had to have back surgery. I'd been in a car wreck years ago, and it just went out. I couldn't walk. And so I didn't tell the doctor not to prescribe the Percocet, and he prescribed it. I started using it again. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not using illegal drugs.
Right, just medicinal.
Yeah, I'm just running. My back, and I get up early, and I have a nanny now that's taking care of my kids, and I'm just so busy. And that's about the time real estate just was going wild, I bought my first lot and flipped it. I think I made $30,000 on the first lot. And I thought, this is great.
That would be addicting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And so then I was buying lots and flipping lots. And thought, well, I should buy a whole subdivision,
Did
and
you know
do.
anything like Portia before you got into it? Because you'd already built. I've noticed you are an entrepreneur. Because I mean, at 16 years old, most kids don't start their own business. But did you know anybody around that was doing like what you were getting ready to do with the real estate stuff, or did you just kind of think this is the time, the place, the opportunity, and I'm going in?
Well, what happened was there were a couple lots that behind our home that I wanted to put under contract, and Chad was like, "You can't do that." It was like $2,500 to lock them up, and
Okay.
they went up in value, like doubled in value. I think I would have put
Yeah.
them under contract for 60,000, and they went up to 120. And then I was really mad about it because
Mhm.
my husband's so conservative. I was like, I am not listening to you anymore.
I'm doing
So
this.
yeah, I'm doing it. So I didn't. I mean, I knew people. We lived in a pretty upscale neighborhood, so there were people building spec homes.
Sure.
Nobody that I just started learning. I mean, I
Yeah.
just started learning everything I could. My parents were always entrepreneurs, so they bought and sold homes and stuff.
Mhm.
But there was also at that time, if you recall, the whole equity deal where people would buy a house and pull equity out of it and invest it in something else. And at first, that's not what I was doing. I was just buying and selling lots. But then I got myself into hard money. So I put a whole neighborhood under contract, and my payments were 50 to 100,000 a month on the hard money.
Mhm.
And I was supposed to get construction loans and build spec homes, but construction loans took a lot longer than, a year later, I'm still making payments.
Right.
Um, and so I just started buying houses, putting them under contract. We'd get an appraisal, and, I sent the appraisal to the banks and the purchase price. So the banks were aware
You
that,
disclosed that.
yeah, I was all disclosed, which was what my big fight was,
Mhm.
that with the government. I'm like, it can't be a fraud against the bank if the bank knows what they're lending. They
Right.
know the value.
Mhm.
But they said that I couldn't even use that defense, like you can't bring that up. And I'm like, so frustrating. But anyway, the truth is my integrity was lacking. I got involved in these deals and borrowed money I couldn't pay back. And
A
when
lot of people did.
a lot of people did, yeah. But I was one that was, and the problem for me was that when the FBI showed up, I had powered through so many hard things in my life
Yeah.
that I'm like, there is no way I'm going to prison. That's not
Yeah.
happening. I
Right.
will go to the death before I go to prison. I
Was it a
just
shock though when the FBI showed up, or like was that a surprise, or were you thinking that they were coming down on you and they were around the perimeter edges looking, and or did you just open the door and there they were?
No, I had heard so a couple of things. I'm just going to say I pissed off a lot of realtors in town because I wasn't buying with realtors. I would just go lock things up on my own. I'm like, why do I
Sure.
need to do that? So I just
Right.
was investing, and I heard that the division of real estate, that people were filing complaints with the division of real estate, and I thought, I don't care,
Yeah.
because
They're
I'm
not
not
my I'm
I'm
in
not
competition
licensed.
with them. Right.
Yeah, I'm not licensed. That's their problem,
Right.
and that's not a good thing either. Like humility, I have learned, is a really great quality. And so I went and hired an attorney, and my attorney's like, "You think you're more important than you are?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to be important at
Mhm.
all." But at first, my attorney said, "This is brilliant, like the way that you're pulling this equity out and how you're doing it." But then the next day, they called back and said, "Hey, you probably better come in. There could be some problems here." And so I had an attorney hired, and they told me again, just stay under the radar. You're probably fine. And
Mhm.
then title companies started saying that the FBI was coming to the title company and pulling some of my documents.
Okay.
And then I got a title company showed me a request from a grand jury investigation. And about that time, the FBI showed up. So it all kind of came down.
All
And
at the
but
same
that was
time.
years. It was years of this going on. As you know, it's terrible. And I just I went through several attorneys too, and pretty much drained us financially. But when the FBI showed up, that was, I had just had another baby because, again, we just have
That's
kids.
what you
And
do.
my husband, at that point, our marriage was not going very well. Like my
Okay.
husband's in way over his head. I had him quit his job to take care of kids. And
Yeah.
so he didn't really know everything that I was doing, but I would call him and say, "I need you to wire 200,000 to title. I need you to do this or do that." Well, that makes him a conspirator,
Yeah.
and at first it was just me, and they basically said, um, they looked at Chad as a victim of me and said, "Well, are you going to leave her or are you going to stand by her?" And that just made me crazy angry because I'm like, how dare you, but they do what they want to do.
Yeah.
They called my son in for a grand jury interview too. That really made me mad too. But it doesn't help to get mad. Like I was up against my own weaknesses, my own pride and arrogance, and all the things that I thought had made me successful were all my things that were killing me in this case. And yeah, I remember the FBI saying, this is going to be okay. It'll be over soon. And I go, does that really work for you guys? Like, it's like, what are you talking about? And then I drove to the FBI building and asked and gave them a request to take a lie detector test. I'm like, you're all just full of crap. And he looks at me, he's like, who do you think you are? So I made everybody so mad. And again, the best thing for me to do when they showed up is to say, yes, I made some mistakes. How can I make it right? Like that would have been the power for me. And it would have been probably might have been a 5-year sentence, but initially my lawyer's like, it would have been 2 years, Portia. Like you could have made this a lot better for yourself, which is true. So
how long did that whole process take from the point where the FBI's at your doorstep to your standing?
That was 7 years. My baby was 3 months old, and she was 7 when I was standing. Yeah.
Wow, it's a long time.
Yeah, and that wasn't. I mean,
when did you decide, Portia, that you weren't going to fight and go to trial?
So, I was still I was addicted to pills at the time, and they actually knew that. So,
of course they did. They know everything.
Well, I was at that point. I was buying a lot of prescription drugs from other people involved in real estate, and this one particular person had a large quantity of prescription drugs coming through, and he called and offered them to me at a really low price. And it freaked me out. Like I said, I don't get scared that often, but I knew my addiction was serious. And so I told my attorney, hey, my attorney and the lawyers kind of knew. And I said, I'm going to get clean somehow. And I'm going to turn this guy in. Like I'm done, So I ended up doing an undercover drug deal with the DEA and bought the drugs, which I think that guy got 9 months, like lucky dude,
Yeah.
I got nothing for it other than sober, which counts. I mean,
sure.
But they put me on Suboxone, which to me I hate at this point in my life because that was worst. And then the government knew that. And so 3 weeks before I went to trial, I was still planning on going to trial. They revoked.
Did they say that they were going to give you any cooperation points or anything towards the wire?
No, I didn't sign an agreement for any of that.
You just did it.
I just did it. But my attorney tried to bring it up when I was sentenced, and they said, we already are giving her a deal, kind of. I just made everyone and whatever, I get it. So, but anyway, 3 weeks before trial, they revoked my pretrial release and locked me up in a county jail. And the day before they revoked my pretrial release, I was at the federal courthouse, and then they shot someone. That day, there was a guy in the courtroom next to us that stood up with a pencil in his hand, and it was a gang case, and the marshal shot him and killed him. And so, I mean, a lot is going on, right? I'm getting ready to go to trial. My husband is facing incarceration. I'm facing incarceration. Everybody's looking at me like, what are you going to do, Portia? What are you going to do? My husband's dad came to my house, and said, please, just take the bullet so Chad doesn't have to go to prison. Yeah. Everyone's just looking at me like, what is she going to do?
It's a lot of pressure.
It was a lot of pressure. And so the day after that shooting, they revoked my pretrial release and put me in jail. And when I went to jail, it was a shock to me because I hadn't been there before. But also,
why did they revoke it?
They revoked it. They knew that I was using Suboxone, and I was doctor shopping. I was getting more than I should.
I got it. Okay.
That's why they revoked it.
Okay. So they saw that as a violation.
It was a violation.
Yeah,
correct.
Got it.
But also, the day before when the marshal shot this guy, you haven't read my book, have you?
I know. I've got it on order. I'm getting it.
Okay. So the day before, when the
I've read a lot of stuff about you, though.
I know. There's a lot out there. I walked out of the courthouse, and they locked it down. My husband and everyone else was locked down, right? And the news is all outside waiting, and I walked out, and the news came running up, and I just said, well, the marshal shot a guy because he stood up in the courtroom. And so that made everybody mad, so that was like that was the final straw with the government. And my lawyers called and said, what were you doing on the news? And no, my husband walked out when he finally got out, and I'm standing there talking the news, and he walks over and he goes, I will pick you up and carry you off this grounds if you don't take my hand and walk away now. He's like, what is she doing out there? So,
Portia.
I know, so stubborn. So I get a call from my lawyers, and they're like, you have made the government mad. And I said, well, I'm mad too. We're all mad.
Yeah, everybody's mad.
Oh, well. But they're like, yeah, but they're not facing incarceration. You are. So the next day they revoked my pretrial release, which I think that had something.
That's everybody's fear. I mean, I was on for 3 years pretrial, and it's a big fear.
I think it was 5 years for me. I mean, I had been on pretrial release, so, but they knew I'd get sick too, because I was on Suboxone, and so I detoxed, and I just got really, really sick, and also in jail. But on top of that, I had a mental breakdown. Like, I literally, the weight, seeing a guy get shot,
sure,
the fear, the weight of all of it, my family, I couldn't even speak, and
you're in jail, which is a horrible place.
It's just so yuck. And so they kept me there for a week. They let me out. My lawyers and my husband's attorney, because he had an attorney too at this point, had a big meeting and we both showed up, and they started trying to tell us how we had to plead. And I just got up and walked out of the room, and they're all like, Portia, we're here for this meeting. And I was like, you guys, no, I'm not. And so they locked me back up, and they said that they wanted to do a mental evaluation to determine if I was competent to stand trial. And then they kept me locked up for about 3 months and it was interesting because the day that I pled guilty, my lawyers had argued with the judge that she's not a danger to society. She's not a flight risk. Why are you keeping her? And the judge, I don't remember what the judge said, but I literally walked in with my attorneys after, and I said, will they let me out if I plead guilty today? And they said, yeah, we'll go make the deal. My lawyers didn't want to go to trial. Nobody wanted to go to trial.
Nobody wants to go to trial.
Yes, I made this deal.
I mean, it's probably a good time to say, 97% of the people indicted do a plea bargain.
Well, the FBI
almost 98%.
He said, and I've seen him do this. He goes, you will go to prison. He said, and here's the thing. If we don't get you on this one, because I had a pretty good lawyer at the time out of Boston. If we don't get you on this one, we'll get you on something else. You should just accept that. You're in denial if you don't think you're going to prison. Well, I just couldn't. I was so frustrated, I
couldn't wrap your mind around it.
I couldn't. But he was right, but not just that. Like, I was in the wrong. Like, I know this, and it was by the grace of God that I pled guilty that day. So I didn't decide until literally I had been pushed to the end of the earth. I mean, I snapped before I would plead guilty, but I did plead guilty, and then. But at that point, again, I had made everybody mad. My range was 0 to 7 years.
Yeah, and they gave you 7 years. And mine was 0 to 5 years, and I got 5. I mean, it's funny how they put, because your hope is that because it's 0, there's be like 2 or 3 or whatever. Well, I want to get into how you're walking into the world of prison. Before we do, I want to recognize the White Collar Support Group. Their sponsor here, and Portia and I are both going to be the October White Collar Conference, and Portia's going to be on one of the panels. She'll be excellent. So, White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you that this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Start here. So, Portia, you finally say, you got me. I'm tagged.
Yeah.
Mentally, where are you?
I mean, I'm still in some denial after I plead guilty. I'm heartbroken and devastated. I mean, I plead guilty. I go home. I'm pretty traumatized because what's
going on with the kids? I've not even thinking. What's that whole world going on there too?
Yeah, so much.
It's mom and dad.
Yeah, so much. So much. Yeah. After I pled guilty, Chad hadn't pled guilty yet. And my little 12-year-old daughter, sweet Sadie, she says, I said, Sadie, it's okay. We'll work this out. You know, I probably won't have to do that much time and we'll work out a deal for Dad. And she just looks at me and goes, Mom, I don't trust anything you say anymore.
Oh,
You said
man.
that this wouldn't happen and you're wrong. And I said, you're right. You know? And then I told Chad, you have to plead guilty. Like, well, no, I didn't do that yet. So, the day of my sentencing, that was when things it just shook me. You know, my lawyers, everybody's like, oh, you're going to get a year or two. You're no criminal history, the same old dance that you hear.
Yeah.
But when I walked in that courtroom, I mean, you've been there. It's such a sterile place to be. There's no mercy. And I knew right when I walked in, the reality of my situation, what I had done to myself in large degree, became very clear. And I could see that I was going to get the maximum sentence, which was 7 years. And I remember looking back at my husband and my children and just feeling devastated for everybody. Like, what have I done? And thinking it's going to take a really long time for this to be okay, you know? Yeah, it was, that day was heartbreaking.
And if I remember right, there was some commotion about the fact that they got up and the prosecution got up and said that she could be a flight risk, she could, you know, be a suicide potential, whatever, because of the length. But Chad, if I read this right, he got up and spoke on your behalf to the judge that you needed this time as a family. And the judge, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong about this, the judge backed off and didn't take you into custody.
Yeah. So what happened was, it was actually the judge. Like the judge, he's like 7 years and then some. If he could have given me more, you know, he was pretty frustrated. And then he said, and Miss Lauder, I'm taking you into custody today. And that was a shock because, you know, you're white collar. You've been on
mortgage fraud.
Yeah, you can self-surrender. I have a family. And I just said, Your Honor. Now, the prosecution even said, we're not asking for that.
Okay.
And my lawyer started trying to argue it, but the judge was dead set.
So was the judge. Okay.
The judge was dead set on, we're taking her into custody, marshals. And I remember feeling, that's the first time in the whole thing I felt some panic. Like, I'm going to freaking lose it on you right now, Judge. Because I'm thinking my kids, you know, my children don't deserve this. Do what you have to me, but at least let everybody go for a minute and figure this out.
Yeah.
But that's when Chad stood up and he said, please don't do this to her. Please don't do this to our family. She needs this time to say goodbye to her children. And that was probably one of the more tender moments of my life because of all that I had put Chad through, to see him stand there and plead with the judge on my behalf. I think that day I knew that we would get through it because I could see, you know, what we had was stronger than anything they could do to divide us. But it was not easy. I mean, the judge gave us 8 weeks. I always say Chad was worth more than any lawyer because the lawyer couldn't get the deal done, but he did.
But Chad did.
And the good news is after that, Chad pled guilty. That was when I just looked at him and I said, you have to plead. We can't take any chance. Because they had said, if Chad goes to trial, and obviously I would plead, or I would testify that it was 100% me, but if Chad goes to trial, we will put you both in prison at the same time. And the deal that was on the table was, if he'll plead guilty and take the felony, then we'll put him in prison after you get home. And even though that's a real shizzy deal, you know, it still seemed like a better solution. The good news was that I got such a heavy hit that in the end, they didn't give him any time. He took the felony, but they didn't give him time and he got to stay home and raise our children.
Wow. What a deal. And so you step into something that's just not right down the street. You know, you got the kids, you got your husband, and there's no prison close.
No. Yeah. So 14 hours away is the closest prison in basically Oakland, California. And I walked into a high security prison, which
Why?
I thought they put a management variable on me. So I ended up walking into a high security prison. And, you know, I was mad about that. I was still mad when I got to prison.
For those that don't know, what that is, what's a management variable?
Oh, well, they can just say watch her.
Yeah, I mean, I know what it is. I just
Yeah.
and it can be tagged on anybody.
Yeah, it can. Yeah. Yeah, because my security level was so low,
Yeah.
but so I'd ask, why am I here? Why am I here?
So what was your thoughts about that, Portia, being tagged and going into a high security prison?
Well, I mean, I didn't know what a low security prison. I mean, I knew what a camp was. That's where I thought I was going.
Right?
But I guess, I mean, now I'm grateful because it worked out the right way for me. But at the time I was mad. I was mad about everything for a while.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, when I walked in, I think I was so heartbroken. Just the feeling of devastation of leaving my children
Mm-hmm.
and looking around and everything is cinder block and everyone's wearing khaki and nobody's happy that I'm there. And
Colorless.
just heartbreaking. All I could do is lay in my cell and cry for
Yeah.
days. It was just devastating. But I shared this when I did my TED Talk too. I kind of had this moment where I got on my knees and I just said a really heartfelt prayer of, listen, I feel like the biggest failure. I have failed everyone in my life, my children, my husband, myself, you, my community. I am in such a deep hole here. And I mean, it takes a lot for me to think I'm licked, but I'm licked. Like I can't get out of this. I can't see my way forward. Please help me know who I am. I just need to know who I am to you. And in that prison, I felt I had this moment of unbelievable clarity where I could see how valuable I am. And I could see how valuable everyone else in that prison is. And I could see that I have an important purpose on this earth, even in my weakest state. And that's when I knew I never did need a man or money or drugs or anything. Here I am completely broken and I am incredibly valuable. And I also felt this connection, this love and connection to everything on this earth. And it was, I have learned that when you know who you are, you can do really hard things. And I've done really hard things, but this was different. Being torn from my children, it had the ability to make me crazy. I mean, there
Sure.
are people in prison that are kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been crazy before. So I was like, there's a lot at stake here. But I chose a different path. It took a minute for me to get humble enough that I could take complete ownership of why I was there and how I'd hurt my family. But that was the path I chose, and it's made all the difference. I defined the first year in prison as denial for me. I would sit around with other people and talk about how done dirty I was,
Yeah.
And there's lots of smart people in prison.
There is a lot of smart people in prison.
But I started to see that I could get really stuck, like if I didn't find a different way forward. And I had to find meaning. So I went and wrote a class. I wrote a curriculum for a photography class. I went to education and started teaching GED because I actually got my GED.
I like that.
When other people show their letters, I show them GED, But anyway, that's my acronym. But yeah, it was really cool because I started connecting with people that were so much more disadvantaged than me. Like thinking that I had been done dirty, looking around, all of a sudden I could see real quickly how privileged my life had been. And I still was angry at the government. I was writing on a blog and posting. I'd send it to my husband and have him post it. And I get called over to the lieutenant's office.
They weren't happy with it.
Oh, so unhappy. And the lieutenant one day, he goes, louder. Do you like coming to my office? And I said, I don't mind it. You have AC and a bathroom over here.
Yeah, right.
He's like, I'm going to lock you up in the shoe. I'm so done with you, I said, you can just open the door and let me out. And he's like, yeah, right. He goes, here's the thing. We didn't do this to you. I don't know why you're so angry at us. And I was just angry because I was hurting. You know? But so they did put me in the shoe. And then I spent a few months in the shoe and getting transferred.
You spent a few months in the shoe?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's something. Cause I mean, the only time I was ever in there is when I first went in, that's just kind of, I think it was just shock therapy when they take Leavenworth and there was this, it looked like Shawshank Redemption. I think it's 1879 building and they put you in the bottom there. And it's funny when that happens because I don't talk about this a lot, but my mind is that, okay, so I just voluntarily surrendered. I went into this place and they put me in this, and what difference would it make if I said I'm not supposed to be here? I mean, it's like everybody would say that. Right. So then your mind starts to wonder, like, maybe this is just where I'm going to be. And so I think that's what they do to, like, at Leavenworth, is they put people in there and then they take them down to the camp to just show them that, listen,
This
this
is
is what
what
it feels like.
right.
And let your mind go for a while, for hours. And it's just, you were in the shoe for months. Tell me
Yeah.
about that, Portia, because I don't even, I can't wrap my mind around that.
Yeah. And I write about that too in my book. At first it was a panicky feeling because, just the small space and being enclosed in.
Because you only get out, what is it, 23 hours a day that you're locked in?
Hours a day. And it's really not even every day that you get out for an hour. And when you get out for an hour, you go.
I wouldn't do that to my dogs.
Right. Yeah. Well, it was refining for me. I got to a place where I got very structured. My own, my dad kicked in for me. It's like, okay, morning time is this. I get up, and I have my list of things that I did.
Real
And
regimented.
I had a book. I would write my goals. My goals were very simple, the things that I would do in there, but exercise at this time. And because, the thing about prison is you learn pretty quick that you get to decide your feelings, your thoughts, your responses. Like, that's your power, right?
Yep.
And so
that is your power. That's the power you have, right?
Yeah. And so
they have everything else.
They have everything else.
You decide how you want to handle that.
You know what, though? How beautiful is that? How many people ever get to a place where they understand what their power is? And your power is your response in almost every situation.
Yeah.
So I really got a lot better at, I wrote a mission statement and I would recite it over and over and over in the shoe. And I would write out these goals of things that I wanted to change my life and do, and I ended up.
That gives you power. And I think that resets you. I had a similar experience, Portia, where it was the first night I was at Leavenworth and I was on the bunk bed. I'm looking up, the hills all lit up with the medium security Leavenworth. And I'm thinking, wow, it's been 6 years and I'm here. After all this time, I'm top bunk, Leavenworth, A2. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I got up and my bunkmate had given me a piece of paper and pen that kind of telling me where, the rules. And I started, there was some light coming in from the bathroom over there. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do what I always do. I'm just going to write down goals of what do I need to do while I'm in here. When I put that down, the pen, I thought, I feel better. Like, I don't know if any of this is going to happen, but I feel like somehow I took back control of whatever. And I really wasn't in control of anything, but it felt better and different.
I use that technique all the time because I work in mental health now. And when people are really depressed or struggling, I'm like, okay, I'm tasking you with writing 100 goals, and they can be anything, because just by focusing on what your power is, and I got to the point, I wrote those same goals. I've written them for close to 10 years now. Every morning, it's how I start my day because it feels so good.
Almost like affirmations to you.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of things that you can do that are within your control, and prison's a great place to learn how to strengthen those, those powers that you have. But
did you feel different when you got it? How long were you in? The shoe? Okay. That's a long time. Because a lot of times guys had been in for like a month or two. They came back looking a little bit different. But
I was a little crazy. I got transferred to, but it was worse after. I ended up getting, I went on Con Air, which is a terrible experience.
I've never heard anybody ever say anything good about Con Air. Did you go through Oklahoma?
Yeah, I went through Oklahoma. I went to the worst place in Oklahoma, which is some backwoods county jail. But before that, I got transferred to Pahrump, Nevada, and I was there for like a month. And they call it diesel therapy. Well,
it is. Yeah. And plus you never know as a prisoner, because you never want to travel as a prisoner because you don't know where you're going to end up.
I didn't know where I was going. So for months, I'm on the go, calling my husband at any county jail going, I don't know where they're taking me now, Yeah. So,
scary.
And I got shipped on a management variable, right? I didn't do anything. I didn't break any rules, but it was just, but it was a really good thing because I got transferred to Waseca, Minnesota, and I really loved it there. It's beautiful. A lot of the officers are Christian, so I go in the morning. I had a great job there. And in Waseca, by the time I left Waseca.
What was your job?
I was the reentry director.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I have my own office.
That is incredible.
I feel like I have the best job in the prison. And I worked, here's the best part. I worked in the rec department because they had a library. And so I was in this room behind the library. And the rec officers are so much easier to work with,
Yeah, more laid back.
People come in and complain about me and they're like, oh no, Louder runs that department. and they
Yeah.
let me come and go as I please. So I was outside a lot.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, it was a great job. And I read the whole library out because I'd
Yeah.
get up early. I'd go down to be alone in the morning,
Yeah.
So I had a good job there. I mean, my heart was so broken because I
Mm.
left my children and family
Hmm.
and they were so far away. But Wasika's really where I came to know who I am, like in such a deep way, and connected with the other women, heard their stories. When I left Wasika, I did art out there. They made me a leader in the program.
Hmm. That
And
doesn't
I grew up.
surprise me.
Yeah. Oh, I had this girl. I mean, girls get in relationships in prison, and so I
Mhm.
had this. I don't know why they put her in art out, but she was in for life, and her girlfriend was in the program too, right? Well, how hard is it to call up? And her girlfriend was one of my bunkmates, so
Hmm.
she got in a fight with another girl. So I pulled them up, and this gal that's doing live, just a great big black girl. She looks at me, she goes, "You're dead louder."
Mm. That's nice.
Yeah, it was awesome. I said, there is nothing like doing an art out program in prison. So what I did was I sat in my bunk for about 5 minutes and I thought about it. I thought, that is such crap that she just said that. So
Yeah.
I walked downstairs and I looked at her and I said, "You said you were my friend." I said, "I pulled your girlfriend up because I'm a leader in this program and I take my integrity seriously." And she looks at me and and I said, "So do what you have to do right now if that's what you need to do." And she goes, "Louder, mad respect."
Look at you.
Yeah, she's like, she goes, "You pull up anyone you want in this program." And from that point on, she had my back. Like literally, I could call anyone out for anything. And she's
Yeah.
like, "Nope, she's off limits." So I mean,
It's funny how respect and stuff works in prison, isn't
oh,
it?
that's so different. But yeah, I grew a lot in art out, and then they shipped me after, and I finally went to a camp. And I
And I'll
was
explain real quick for those down in the Cayman Islands that are listening that RDAP is a program you get into. It's a 9-month program. A lot of people get a year off.
yeah,
Um, and you go every day. You live in a different part of the prison, and
yeah,
it's kind of cult like. It's kind of cult like.
yeah.
Um,
Drink the
and but
stick, right?
there's it's behavioral thinking. Um, I'm a believer in it. I think that we had some people that were teaching it that probably shouldn't have been teaching it because they wanted to be CEOs, but the idea of it was very good. And it should probably be something that's even taught in high school. It's a very useful thing, I think, for behavioral therapy. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, what I learned in RDAP, now I've lost you. Where are you? Sorry. Trying to send an email saying I'm going to be late for my next meeting. But anyway, we're going to have to wrap it up here in the next
all right.
minutes. But yeah, what I learned in RDAP was that communication is a huge deal. I taught, assertive communication. I remember coming into the unit one day with a book that was titled, assertive communication. And the girls looked at me and said, "Don't read that. You're already, I mean, in terms of setting boundaries and assertive communication, it was really helpful for me. They made me stay a year because they had me stay on. I mean, I graduated in 3 months, but they had me stay on and continue to mentor
Mm-hmm.
other girls. And I loved that. I loved that role. I ended up getting shipped to California to do my last little time at a camp, and that was interesting. I was so low security, they just put me on a plane, and I
Yeah.
flew out. And I remember walking into the camp and going, "Whoa!" Like I was happy to be there. They had palm trees there, and it was California. So I left in January in Minnesota. It's freezing cold, and I love the sun. So I enjoyed that, but by the end of my sentence, my life was so beautiful. I felt very free. And I mean, you know what it's like to wait for them to call your name.
Oh yeah.
And that was an incredible experience for me because I had really gotten close to every prison I went to. I got close to the women there. And when they called my name, all the women came running out cheering for me. "We love you, Miss Portia. We love you." And my heart was so full because of who I had become and the
Mhm.
connections that I built. And man, it was unbelievable just to hold my husband's hand after, almost 5 years. I got in the car. He's waiting for me with flowers and we drove away. And I had no idea what my life would look like. I didn't know I would be speaking about this, that I'd write books.
Mhm.
I didn't know what would become of my
What
life.
were you thinking after that amount of time? The 5 years
Yeah.
going back out to reentry. You knew your husband was there, had been supportive, but what were you thinking as far as like, what am I going to do now?
I mean, I was nervous,
Yeah.
I didn't want to ever have to be the main provider again,
Hmm.
and Chad had been doing a good job kind of rebuilding. We were financially devastated like most people, but
Yeah.
I went to work as a photographer, and then I went to work in drug treatment because that's where my heart was. And while I was in drug treatment, the girls in the treatment center loved my prison stories. So that's when I wrote my first book. And I really wrote it for the women I left behind. I sent it in to them and they loved it. And then I
And
started,
that book is in the prisons.
yeah, it's in the prisons. Living
Yeah.
Louder. If you're in prison, read it.
Yeah.
But also, when I came back to Utah, I started getting requests to share my experiences. And so I speak a lot about it.
And you're such a good speaker. I mean, it's so hard to get up on a stage as you do it with the TED Talk, and you did such a great job. And I'm sure that the people that you go and speak to, and you speak a lot, you're so authentic, and your story, the humbleness and all those things that draw people in. I think that's why, probably why you speak a lot, because people like to feel like they get, and you're using your journey to help people. And what a great thing to make you fill you up, to be able to
Well,
use all that.
I appreciate that. I don't know that I had any idea that I mean, I did a lot of speaking in art app,
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, I was in front of a group a lot, but I think just that my heart was so full that I was willing to do, whatever they asked me to do. And
One of the things that I thought was interesting, and I know we're running short on time, the one of the people that was there for your TED Talk,
yeah,
who was filming you,
yeah,
was the son that you gave away to adoption.
right.
And so you have a relationship with him.
Yeah. And what's so neat about that. So I had been home for about a year and his adoptive mother reached out because I do a lot on social media too. And
Yeah.
she says, he wants to get to know you. And that's been so beautiful. What's amazing about him, his name's David, is that he's a talented videographer.
Of
And
course.
I mean, but I mean, he didn't grow up with me, didn't even really know,
Right. It's in
and
his
so
bloodline.
that's really neat. And that's been beautiful. And him reconnecting with our whole family's been beautiful.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Portia, what do you think, out of all the things that you've been through, what do you think's your greatest takeaway through all this?
You can't imagine how beautiful your life can become when you're in the thick of the hard moment. I call it the middle, when you're in the middle. My takeaway is don't ever give up. If you're in the grit, if you're in the grit, man, something beautiful is coming. And when you get there, you'll see how everything you went through was important to get you here. It gave you the perspective, the compassion, the understanding. How could my greatest purpose in life come through going to prison? If somebody would have told me before, when I was fighting my case, hey, you're going to go to prison, but your life's going to be beautiful, I would have said, heck no.
You're nuts.
I'm not going to prison. I don't care if my life's going to be beautiful. I couldn't picture this life that I have.
Yeah.
Man, am I grateful for it. The view that I got walking through a prison has changed my whole life, my relationships, my integrity. And I feel the restoration that came through that process. When people ask me, what do you think needs to change? And I say, the only thing that needs to change is that people out here need to know how amazing people in prison are, because we're going to figure our way out. Like, we don't need
26 million people out there that have, ex-felons.
There's, I believe in the people. I don't believe in the system, but I believe in the people that are in prison, the people that I met. I believe in their strength and their grit and their compassion because I've lived with them and I know them. And the people, if you want to do something for people, then cheer us on. Cheer us on, because that's what we need. And I
love that.
So yeah, that's
well,
it.
If you're, what a great takeaway. I knew you'd have a great takeaway. And for those out there trying to find anything more about Portia, go to portialouder.com. You can find her books, Born to Be Brave and Living Louder. Is it Born to Brave? Born to Be Brave?
Yep.
Okay. And and I've got mine on order, so I'm all in. Um, talking about being grateful, I'm grateful for Homestead Financial letting me use all this fancy equipment in here. If you've got home mortgage needs, call Greg Afdiev. He knows all that stuff. Please leave a review on Apple if you got time. I know it's a hassle, but it really helps the show. I've got a new website out there, BrentCassity.com. It went live last week. It's not the old one. It's the new one. I spell it wrong. It's TY, not a DY. As I used to say when I was leaving, sending my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Portia Louder, what a great story, great person. I love what you're doing, and it's inspiring. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story.
Thank you, Brent. We'll do it again.
We'll do it again. All right. Nightmare success, in and out.